very lucky. I think I wrote something last year promoting like annual events in the Tetons during the Fall Arts Festival.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke with someone at the Chamber of Commerce, and she said something to me like, people think of the Tetons as a world-class art destination because that's what it is.
Mm.
I mean, and I was kind of like, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, again, you look around and you see the obvious inspiration of the landscape, but, you know, there are animals within that landscape, and there, you know, maybe you don't paint the whole landscape, you paint an individual tree and focus on the color of that one thing and the shadow. And Mike's work, Mike Piggott's work, is a great example of that, of a true simplification of kind of delivering that vastness to you. I think it's best done a lot of the time when you focus on the detail of it rather than the majesty of it. So many people have done that, and it can be done over and over again, and it can be done by people that are modern masters that are doing the amazing, I like to call it God's work. I can't help it. I believe that that creating is a matter of channeling the divine in some way. And, you know, it is a celebration of what surrounds us. And truly, this neighborhood is just an amazing example. It's one of the most beautiful places to see in the lower 48, for sure.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. Yeah, so talking to Mike about his work, it's a good reminder of why people create in our neighborhood, but in general, too. I mean, another person, I have a similar background where my parents were both professionals, and Mike's father was an MD, but he's an artist, and I'm sure his MD father was not like, you know, the best thing to do is run out and be an artist. Go for it. You know, I mean, our parents are trying to protect us from those creative pursuits because it's hard. It's hard work. It's hard to stay inspired. It's hard not to compare yourself to others. And really this man, he's been working full time at this for 5 years, but he's been working at it his whole life, you know, through his observation, through his love of nature. He was creating before he had full-time status as an artist, you know, and nurturing those skills. And he's got this kind of deft approach with his brush. It reminds me a lot of Hopper. There's an approach there that's soft. And, you know, he talks about growing up near the Virginia, some of the oldest mountains in our country in Virginia. And he described that light there as lends a softness to the wilderness there. And I think he's carrying that into his work here. You know, it doesn't matter what outdoor depiction he's doing. There's that softness to it. And I think that's what I really enjoy about his work.
Yeah, I love the moment that you guys talk about light and how different the light is there as opposed to, you know, West Virginia or wherever else, because that's something that if you are fortunate enough to travel not only around the United States, but around the world, you experience light in a different way depending upon where you are, the humidity of the location, how old is it, what kind of buildings are around you. It's very interesting. And he does a great job.
I recently interviewed an artist who pointed out to me, like, he primarily works in the Rocky Mountain West, but he had time in the Pacific Northwest. And seeing how things are presented to his eye there made him see the desert Southwest better. So, you know, it is a matter of noticing and taking yourself out of your environment and being willing to you just keep looking. You know, it lends to so much in life, but it lends in so much to creativity, just to keep your eyes open and, you know, keep the natural world close, I think.
Definitely. Well, we all hope you enjoy this episode with Mike Piggott.
All right. Well, you know, we're kicking off our 6th episode here with Mike Piggott. And Mike is an artist based out of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. He works in oil. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for saying yes.
Yeah, this is exciting and scary.
I think sometimes scary to talk about your creative process, actually. I think it's kind of personal. And we do land there a lot. Kind of
right, every day.
In the behind the scenes stuff, it matters. Like, I think there's like there's a meme out there that's like a picture of an iceberg, and the tip says, what you see of an artist's work, and the whole bottom is like what you don't see.
Well, yeah, what a great visual for it all. I'll go out and I'll sketch all day, every day, or paint. And even when you're having dinner with friends right now, sitting here talking with you, all of it kind of goes through this, whatever it is, the Mike Piggott filter, art filter, creative filter. And I don't even know it at the time, but it starts turning into things, into stuff. Right. And you don't know what is going to get through the filter, or what pops up the next day or 6 months from now.
Yeah.
And that's a fascinating process. It's like, oh wow, look what just popped up out of the soil. Look at this little flower.
Oh, that's so nice. And Mike and I live in a mountain valley that just experienced one of the biggest record-breaking winter. And we were discussing the joy of seeing dirt after how many months? 7? We've been there.
I think it's been 7 months.
Yeah. And when you use nature as your inspiration, like Mike does, I just feel like there's so much to see out there, but when you see it with an artist's eye, like you were just saying, you can't turn it off.
You can't turn it off. It's there all the time, and it's still. I mean, like if it started snowing right now, it's like lovely.
There's something good about it, no matter what, right?
It's absolutely beautiful every time. And it tells a different story every time. Every storm's a little different, and it gets you going. There's this fun energy about the snowstorm. So anyway, but this time of year, we're all, we're doing our spring dance.
A little bit, for sure.
Yeah.
I've been interviewed a lot of Teton artists, Mike, and I've never really gotten into the subject of why the Tetons. But, I think anyone who's been here is like, because of the mountains, dummy. Like, obviously that's it. But I really feel like there is a certain brand of light here. Like there's something to do with our elevation and the way we're positioned. I don't know. There's a magical light here. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, I would, for sure. There's just beautiful light here. But I would almost say the Rockies, you go down to Santa Fe, there's wonderful light in Santa Fe and Taos.
Nice.
But yeah, I would say that when you're up high, this town's at 6,500 feet or 6,200, and Santa Fe's at 8,000.
Right.
Being high up in the mountains just creates a wonderful sense of light and shadow, and shadow is very important in paintings. The light and the shadow, the combination, you get a wide range of values from dark to light.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's just very engaging. When I was a kid, one of the first times we went out to Santa Fe, the shadows are just like this glowy blue. They're reflecting from the blue from the sky coming down into those spots where there is no light. And it's essentially reflected light from the sky. And it's just a wonderful, those dark blues against the junipers. It's just wonderful.
There really is something about the Rocky Mountain sky, that's for sure.
For sure. And then when you're here and you're up in the mountains on a bright sunny day, and there again, the shadows on the snow, it's spellbinding. And the material you see right there is just gorgeous. The shadows, the patterns, and the sky, like right now we look outside and we see kind of a light cerulean blue. If there were any shadows down here on the valley floor, you see a kind of an ultramarine blue in the shadows with a earthiness in there. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah. Agree. It's really rich here. It's visually rich, and there's a feeling as well. Did you grow up near the mountains? You grew up in the Northeast, right?
I grew up in Mid-Atlantic. I grew up in Virginia, Lynchburg, Virginia.
Old mountains.
And so one of the oldest ranges in the world. So anyway, I've spent my time in the hills ever since I was a kid. Yeah. And being outdoors, experiencing the outdoors most of my life. And it's just a wonderful experience, for example, the painting behind me is based on, behind us is based on the deciduous forest in Virginia. And, the light you get there is so different. And it's a pale, soft light, and every once in a while you'll have kind of an out west day where there's not much moisture in the atmosphere and you get this bright day, but usually, your shadows it's a softer shadow and you don't get the kind of like the hard edges and the patterns that you get with the light and the days out here. So it's a different setup. But anyway, being outdoors is, it's a big part of where I've come from and what I experience, So
during your upbringing, you were close to the outdoors and you had many, many opportunities to kind of be fed by that during your childhood.
Absolutely, yeah. One of my childhood friends, we'd go to his farm. It's his family's farm almost every weekend, and we were fishing. He was big. He'd catch snakes. I'd watch him catch snakes. Garter snakes, and he'd grab a copperhead and say, just got a copperhead. So being around all that stuff is just, it's part of the whole story, I guess.
And then you matriculated in college for art as well.
I did, yeah. Went to
and spent some time overseas.
I did a student exchange. Went to Winchester College, Winchester School of Art in Winchester, England, and boy, that's a beautiful spot. I can't think of the fly. There's a famous fly fisherman that is from Winchester, and there's a beautiful river that runs through Winchester.
Nice.
And anyway, did a student exchange over there and got to go to London and go to the Tate Museum and see their collection. The Ingras, the Hockneys. It was just a wonderful collection.
I'm sure. Yeah. Was that kind of a transformative time for you as a creative?
It certainly was.
Yeah, to be exposed to all that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And was it? And I know that just from our talking and kind of knowing each other just a little bit, that your parents were professionals.
My father.
Your father was a professional.
My father was a pathologist, a doctor,
Gotcha.
doctor in Lynchburg, Virginia, and my grandparents lived right outside of D.C. And so we'd go up and visit them and get to the museums, the National Gallery,
nice.
and all those, the Corcoran and the Phillips collection. And it's fun to just ever since I was a kid. Going and looking at all those collections.
Just being let loose to wander around.
Absolutely.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
And then on your own journey as a creative, though, I'm sure that it was a challenge to choose art as a major, kind of based on...
my grandfather was an artist, and so it was almost like just a natural thing to do, to get into, I guess. And ever since I was a kid... just drawing was it was like, okay, I'm doing this forever. This is,
I love it.
So it was just kind of natural. It's like almost, it's been a natural reaction to steer away from what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's like, that. It's like, yeah, I think I'll make another painting,
Yeah. I like to think of like the childlike impetus to create. It's buried in all of us, and certainly life can steal it away in many different ways that are unexpected and tragic and hard. And I think, though, that what I kind of want to get at with each person I talk to, and even with the audience, is like, what carried you through? What about your imagination was a place of refuge in a way, and then to kind of evolve through that idea. The thing is, not everyone gets to stay in their imagination when they're making a living.
Right.
That
absolutely.
is a big deal.
Yeah, it really is.
It's really hard
It really is.
And it's like,
hard.
what keeps you going? You were brought up by an MD, and I'm sure that, you thought to yourself, well, maybe I should be, everybody does it. They look at their parents. What are they doing? Maybe I should do that, you know? And I think that it's great that you were brought up by someone who didn't go the creative route, expose you to beautiful creative things, but also then you had the opportunity to do it on your own the way Mike Piggott wanted to do it. You know what I mean? Like, not Mike Piggott's family, but what Mike Piggott felt was best for him.
For sure. And I feel really blessed with my parents in the sense that they were just like, go for it, be an artist.
That's wonderful.
And Dad sat me down one day, and it was like 2 sentences. He's like, only about 1% of the people out there buy art. If you're good with that, go for it. And which I did. And somehow it's working out, it really is. But it's this, I feel blessed for for being here and being able to pull this off and have this studio and live in this beautiful town and get work done. And kind of really following my heart, my bliss.
Sure.
I think sometimes I'd like to have this idea of more of a structure of what I'm supposed to do next. And it kind of doesn't work that way. On the way to work, I usually stop and get a cup of coffee, and then I'll drive around for a little bit and just kind of see things, sometimes go for a ski. And depending on what I see, that ends up usually feeding into, if not today, what I saw a week ago, finds itself in my work. And so in a certain way, it's almost like journaling or
I love that comparison.
Yeah. So it just, this thing, these experiences just turn into art. And so anyway, it's really just kind of follow my nose and these things I experience. And then once I get in the studio and start working, there's this sense of exploration where it's like, well, what I've seen, the memory of what I've seen, the drawings, the records of what I've seen, camera once in a while. But then it's like, okay, that sky was a pale blue. I'm going to make it orange today, and sometimes why, I don't know, but there's just this inner voice that's, make that orange.
Right.
So, and you can see like behind us is like, there's a fun thing in patterns and an interest in patterns. And it's like, okay, and I'm just going to kind of follow my nose with this and go. And it turns itself into something,
right.
So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That you're falling into kind of the patterns of nature, which, once you understand the Fibonacci sequence,
yeah, right.
There's no turning back, Mike.
Yeah.
Once you can see it in everything if you just look close enough. That's it, dude.
Right, yeah. Stuck and rolling with it, right?
Right, absolutely. And then I've noticed, too, about your work, Mike works in oil primarily. Have you worked in any other mediums?
Watercolor, acrylics, and then, charcoal and pencil. Elizabeth, I just listened to her podcast the other day, and she was talking about she uses ink and the Mylar. And years ago, I used that, and that was really fun. You get some crazy, ghostly effects.
Oh, Heidi Young.
Yeah, thank you. You get some wonderful effects with that. And so anyway.
Yeah, you'll dabble. So you'll dabble.
Dabble and mess around. And it's mostly oil, but there's a lot of acrylic, and sometimes acrylic in the car is nice. It dries fast, so you can drive down the road,
And then I was going to ask you, though, you follow your gut when you're using color. I love how you describe that. But then do you always use a limited palette in comparison to what, like you like, I got to lay this orange down, and then do you let it just all come in? Are you always kind of trying to keep it couched and narrow and like in a challenging?
I can't even say, there's this big thing about the limited palette, but we learn it here on snowy days, like when it snows. there's this beautifulness, and whether it's a really dark storm or a really bright sunny storm, the sun's kind of coming through the clouds and everything's kind of bleached out and overexposed. But anyway, there's a limited palette there. And there's a gorgeousness in that. Like in the summertime, we see all of it. We see the blues, the browns, the greens, and sort of everything is there. But then, like, when we get that first snowstorm or just a rainstorm and the clouds come in, it all gets dark and all of a sudden the values are close.
Yeah, it's also muted, right?
And it's just like, wow, that is beautiful. And it's blues and browns for the most part, and a little bit of green.
And that tonality, that atmosphere.
And so we see that, there's a light show in Mother Nature all the time. Yes. And it's like, and we learn, we see these things happen. And it's like, I love that limited palette that Mother Nature's showing me right now. It's like, wow. And then a half an hour later, it's like, okay, everything's on again,
Right.
And so anyway, to answer that question, once I put the orange down, it's like, a brown or a yellow is going to look good with this. Maybe just a touch of blue, but I don't want the blue wrestling with the orange. So, but you almost don't think about it. You just kind of
it's intuitive.
You just kind of truck along and it unfolds.
Yeah. How long have you been doing this, Mike? How long have you been making art for a living?
For a living, about 5 years now.
Wow,
roughly.
what?
Yeah, about 5
But you've been doing it for so long.
I know, right, yeah. And so, I'd have a day job, and one of the coolest day jobs I had was working for a company in Jackson, and we'd install art in homes. And seeing what people collected and seeing art in these homes, sometimes you'd take the art out of the crate and then put it into the van. And so you'd see it in the warehouse, and then you'd drive it to a big, beautiful home that's lots of people that have art collection. Their homes are really kind of muted. It's beiges and soft tans. And so when you put the art in the house, it looks gorgeous because it really pops.
It's on that neutral palette.
Yeah, exactly.
Really nice.
And so it's fun to see. It was fun to see these pieces go into homes, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, what a stage for this painting.
Yeah.
And that was a study and
well, it's really just another way to be exposed to art. I mean, and these are, I'm sure, gorgeous originals that are, the opportunity that these clients have to own that level of art. For sure. And then to be up close to it, so close that you're touching it and hanging it, like, I think my heart is beating a little fast right now.
Right, yeah.
All right, yeah. So you've been doing this for a living and making a living at it for 5 years. And yet to know Mike is to know that he has a very extensive catalog, and he was making art before that and probably selling it, but not doing it full time, I'm guessing. Yeah, not doing it full time. But I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it wasn't full time for sure, but like I said earlier, you're sort of recording everything or taking it all in. And so I'd work all day and then dinner and homework with my son. And then, 9 o'clock, go up to the studio and paint till maybe midnight, and then then get a good night's sleep for tomorrow. Sure, but it was always part of your day to day in some way. Absolutely, that's so great. Yeah. And how do you keep that alive within yourself, Mike? Like, I'm not you. I'm not an artist who picks up a brush, but to keep doing it and deep inside, were you saying there's an audience for this, or just like I can't stop? I think a little bit earlier, it's probably more I can't stop. I can't stop. I can't stop. And it's funny too. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, not at all. Right. Yeah. And I think part of it is just this sense of curiosity. Like, how do I understand what I've seen and what I've been thinking about? Start making marks and putting things down, and lots of times when I'm examining something, thinking about something,
I don't figure out right away. It's a process, and sometimes it's 20 paintings later. It's like I'm figuring this out. Figuring out what I saw and how to paint it, and how to paint it where I understand it.
I like to say too, even with creativity, you are trying to develop some kind of skill. You want to get better at how you apply your brush and how you choose color. And those are, it's the crawling. The crawling is just as important as the baby steps. And, to think of yourself as running, I think is almost like too much.
For sure, yeah.
I just want to walk at a steady pace. I'm standing up now.
Right, yeah. Right.
But I mean, those infancy things that happens in creativity, I hate that people are maybe driven out of trying something new because they think they should be good at it right away.
Right. Just start.
It makes me sad that anyone would quit because I'm just not good at this. I'm like, well, how many times have you done it?
Right.
Everybody was a beginner once.
Yeah. And you've got to start somewhere, I mean, like we live in a ski town, and it's like, you're not going to be a great skier in a season, but in a season you've learned so much.
Right.
But at the end of the season, you're like, oh my, it's like, look what I can do now.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of going out and doing it and tackling it, for sure.
And not to be afraid.
Not to be afraid. And it's like wrecking's part of the deal, crash and put yourself back together and go.
Yeah.
Get up and start rolling again,
Sure. I mean, any stand-up comedian will tell you that their most terrifying memories of bombing is sometimes the best thing that ever happened to them, because they were like, okay, I'm not good at telling that kind of joke.
Right.
But also, how can I get better?
Right.
Maybe I should reshape the material or just abandon the story altogether because it's so bad.
Right. But
you have to fail. Oh God, I hate the word fail. You've got to play and wipe out. Like
you've got to wipe out. Yeah. And it's like, failure is like kind of it's a bad word, or
it's a tough word. It's a tough one.
It's a crazy way to title something, because for example, if I make a painting that doesn't work, it's not a failure. It's simply a guide to figure out how to get to that place. And so it is. It's like crashing. You're skiing. That's a great analogy. It's like, and on a rotten day, you learn how. It's like, okay, I'm going to learn how to ski this rotten snow. And in 3 or 4 seasons, you're ripping through stuff that, it's like you'd think of it as frozen bricks. Mm. And in 2 or 3 years, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a ball.
I'm sure if you did any skiing in Virginia.
Ice, sheets of tin.
Ice will still teach you something, and so will blessed, blissful powder, even though I'm not a skier.
Right.
I surely can understand the difference.
Well, we've got to get you out there on the powder one day.
Forget it. I can cross-country ski. Okay.
Right.
We've talked about that. I like the 2-track, and I'm a beginner, perpetual beginner, but I love to snowshoe. Right. I just want to hike year-round and, get a good walk in and break some trail in a pair of snowshoes. I think that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's me.
Yeah.
I go slow.
Well, we've got to get you out there cross-country skiing.
Yeah, I want to get better at it.
And you're not a perpetual beginner. You'll every day, every ski you get better.
Mm-hmm. We'll see. Yeah, that's me trying to fight the fear right there. I need to remember. I got on a fat bike this year, which is if you call it a snow bike, you're actually not calling it the right thing, because a snow bike actually has skis on it for people that have a death wish, I think.
Right.
It's literally skis. Like, it's the thing so a fat bike is the fat, bigger mountain bike on steroids that you take into the snow.
And how did you like that?
Oh my God. Okay. There is no better feeling, first of all, than getting on a bicycle to make you feel like a child. Especially if you're like going kind of fast and you feel safe, like you're not being crazy reckless, but you can like breathe deep and feel the wind in your hair and that kind of shit.
Right.
I got a little bit of that, but what was even better than that was I was trying to follow a single track, and they described it to me as more difficult because it's not that wide, and you really have to focus on what you're doing, or you're just going to fall over into whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever dammed up snow is next to you, right. And you're like, got maybe 8 inches. I'm not sure, but I fell down immediately, and this is why it was the best part. Falling down was the best part because I already felt like a kid, which I mean, everything's bigger on that bike. Even the pedals. The pedals will accommodate your snow boots. It's fascinating. It's really great, you guys. Try it. And so I fell down, and as I'm falling, the middle-aged adult inside me was like, this is really going to hurt. I'm falling. And then I fell, but I was falling into an 8-foot snow drift. And so I just fell into powder.
It's nice and
easy. And
easy.
Started laughing immediately. Right. I was just laughing my face off. I'm like, and you're afraid of falling? Just get back on that stupid bike.
Yeah.
So it was the best. Like, I mean, just even to try anything new in the snow, because here, like, I don't downhill, and so many people do. And, you know, they kind of want you to. They're like, well, you're here. You want to experience all the stuff. You know?
Yeah.
You can't be afraid of doing it. Know your limitations. I've tried downhill skiing, so I know my own limitations. But
right.
Of course, I'm getting on a fat bike again. That was amazing.
Well, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many good trails around here.
Yes.
Then it's a growing part of the culture around here. You know, so.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of intimidating to move here too, because there are people, you know, talk about artists that aren't making a living. I mean, there are people here that are on the verge of being an ultra athlete, and they're just like, you know, they volunteer. They have a full-time job. They do normal everyday stuff, but they're like just ripping it up on the ski hill.
Right.
And so when you move here and you have none of those skills, and you're like, do I even belong in this community? But there's so many ways to belong.
Absolutely. You know? Yeah. Right.
And you've been doing it for so long as a creative in this kind of, people like to call it Idaho here, audience, because we are in Idaho, but yet we are not very far from Jackson Hole.
Right.
And so it is a combined community.
Oh, certainly. I mean, you know, so much of our cultures, these states, I mean, we're blended. It is Idaho, you know. It is.
Super catchphrasy touristy, but yet it is the truth. Yeah. But I mean, there is, I like to say that Jackson Hole is definitely a world-class art destination. And I don't know if many people know art in the West. You know, it's about Sedona and Scottsdale and, you know, Aspen for sure. I like to think of Jackson as one of those enclaves, but better. Right. I mean, that's just how I see it. Maybe I'm a little biased.
Well, I mean, it's you know, I feel very privileged and lucky to be here and be part of the art scene here and watching it develop or keep on going. It used to be just kind of a plein air kind of group back in the day, and the plein air artists are wonderful. But now there's kind of more, I don't know how to say it, contemporary.
Yes.
And it's just there's wonderful energy and it's fun to see. It really is.
It is.
It's a great group of people, and there's a lot of us. It's growing. It's
certainly
it's going off. You know?
For sure. I'm like a big fan of you know, Moran and Bierstadt, and I love those old timey Rocky Mountain landscape outdoor painters. But I love also very much that contemporary vibe is finally being embraced more in Jackson Hole. It used to be, you know, years ago it was basically all antlers and fur, and you know that was about it.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
But now, even with the same themes, even with landscape things and themes and wildlife themes, there is more of a broader kind of sense of a modern take on these themes.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, you know, I feel like the West can still play its amazing definitive role in inspiring world-class, world-renowned, amazing painters, but it doesn't always have to be like this traditional approach, you know?
Right. Yeah.
You know? And there's something to be said, clearly, though, for those who are still embracing that tradition and doing really wildly amazing things with it still. I mean, there's still the traditional landscape painter out here that thrives because the subject is just, you know?
Right. Yeah, I just visited a friend. She lives up Pack Saddle Road. And so we were walking up Pack Saddle, and from Pack Saddle Road, you look over and you see the Tetons, and that's the view. Albert Bierstadt painted the Tetons, you know, God, that was a long time ago. It's like, I want to say that was the 1880s when he painted that. And so anyway, and it was beautiful. It was like, look at this. This is we're about where Thomas Moran was.
Just astonishing.
So, you know, it's been a long history of artists out here now. So,
and how this landscape inspires and and what new interpretations can bring to it. Because I just feel like as many times as we want to interpret it, just go for it. Like, don't keep it closed up into one
absolutely
corner.
Right. Yeah. Open up the box and let it go.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
There's so much to share and feed from. I mean, the energy from this place is incredible. I mean, when you go hiking out here, when you come home, you're not tired. It's just like, energized. Oh my gosh, you are energized. It's like great? It's such a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it is. And I think that too. Like, you keep going back to the word curious and curiosity, and keeping those visuals in your active life. And I think I said to one of the guests, there's so much to be said for what you do when you're not doing anything.
Right.
And it's just that it's just living. It's being in the world, but turning on your senses. And I could say to someone that I love to shop at the grocery store because of all the colors, and I go slow, especially through produce, and then that person will be like, "You're out of your mind. The people there are insane." I'm like, "Yes, we're all insane, but I can see the charm and beauty in a grocery store." And
absolutely,
I'm never going to get over that. And
right.
It does have something to do with my late mother, who I think would give us a treat every time we left the grocery store. So, like, being good in that environment got me rewarded.
Beautiful, right?
Still programmed for that, Mike. Still.
Well, and I mean, and kind of this time of year, I mean, it's just the snow's just beginning to melt. But when you go into the produce, it's like, wow, there's green in here. Yeah. It's like, look at those red apples. Look at these big plum grapes. It's like, right on.
I've been living in a limited palette. I must come to the grocery store.
Advanced Pretend is a podcast produced by 9 Stories Creative Podcast Studios, created by Jenn Ryan, executive produced and edited by Matt Jackson. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.